Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Minton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Jennifer Stewart, a renowned leader in Canadian business and public affairs. Celebrated for her expertise, Jennifer has been named one of the top 25 people in the capital and earned a spot in Ottawa's top 40 under 40. She's the founder and CEO of Syntax, a communication and public affairs company, co-host of the Honest Talk podcast and community, which we'll talk more about today, and president and CEO of the Canadian Energy Marketers Association, among other notable roles. Join us as we explore her journey, insights, and tips for aspiring professionals and entrepreneurs. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. Great to be here.
Thank you for being here. I want to start with what motivates you to live your best life.
That is a great question. What motivates me? I think it's actually just living a life that's true to myself. Like, my kids motivate me, my husband motivates me, my team workers motivate me. But if I'm being super honest with you, I think it's that intrinsic self-motivation to show up for yourself, to be proud of yourself and the work that you do, because it's so true. When you're happy with yourself and you feel like you've given it your all, you can give to others. So it really is this drive that I don't think is motivated by other people. It's not motivated to please other people. It's motivated by living kind of the biggest, most passionate, most successful, and I use the word successful not in terms of a business sense, but in terms of, my personal attributes, life that I can.
I think that's a great perspective to have. It makes me think about, I don't know the premise of this actual data, but I saw a TikTok yesterday where someone was saying that the most like well-rounded kids, the kids that do the best, wasn't actually if they had a dad in the home, but it was if their mother was happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought,
I
oh,
think
that's
it's
really
so
interesting.
I think it's so true. And I honestly, that is what drives me. It's to be personally happy so that I can model that for others. Because you know what it's like. We all have bad days. And when you're projecting or you're faking that happiness, it feels so insincere. And we've all been there and feels
Mhm.
so inauthentic. So I'm really focused on me. And that sounds very selfish, but it's so I can be selfless for others.
Mhm. I think it's such an important perspective, and I think you're right. It's hard for people to wrap their brains around,
Yeah.
but it truly does make such a big difference, and I can see it in my own
Yeah.
life and in yours as well. When you look at what does your life currently look like right now, like you have
Yeah.
some businesses, you have kids, what does it look like?
It looks like a lot of different pockets. Like I visualize it, and it's like there's syntax, which is about 80% of my professional life, which is my communications and public affairs firm. There's the Honest Talk, which is just like my passion project that fuels me when I wake up in the morning. And then there's, I meant 80% of my professional life is syntax. And then there's my kids. There's my community. I sit as the chair of the Village of Carp BIA. I love community. I think it's so important to your soul as a business owner and as a
Mhm.
person. So it's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different chapters. And I've got an article out today on the
Oh.
honesttalk.ca that talks about the biggest lesson I've learned in business and in life, and it's compartmentalization.
Mm.
So this has been like very deliberate in how I train myself to look at what I do because there's so many different aspects to it. So
Mhm.
it's when I'm at work, I'm at work. I'm very much present with you here today. When I'm home, I'm going to be in a rink tonight. My son's in hockey finals. I'm going to be at the rink, not on my phone. And
Mhm.
it's like I've trained my brain to be where I am. Yoga has played a huge role in that. And that's
Mm.
been such a key to success when you balance a lot of balls in the air, being present where you are is super important, and being able to
Mhm.
close off the workday. Someone had an analogy that your workday is like a bubble and it builds throughout the day, and there's stresses and there's excitement and there's client work. And at the end of the day, you pop it so it doesn't sit or loom over you during
Mhm.
your personal life. And that's been super important. So that's kind of how I view my life. A lot of different chapters, um, but they all work really well together and give me a lot of fulfillment.
I love that. I love those analogies too. Those will definitely stick with me, Jennifer.
The bubble one stuck with me. Somebody told me that, and I was like, that's exactly what it is. Like, you know what it's
Mhm.
like. You've got good days, you've got stressful days. There's many things happening. At the end of the day, you pop your bubble and you
Mhm.
go home.
Yep. Yep. Your kids walk through the door and you need to
Yep.
change gears. And even if you've had a bad day, it's about, how was your day and what did you do? And
Yeah, exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
I remember when I work from home a lot now, but when I used to work downtown, coming home when my kids were little off the bus, you're kind of tired and exhausted, the
Yeah.
bus stops. And I remember kind of almost like using the door frame and putting a smile on my face and be like, I have
Yeah,
energy, I can do this. And just being like,
totally.
okay, now I'm mom and
Yeah.
I'm gonna give my energy to this even though I'm tired. And that
Yeah.
mind shift makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference. And I would say too, and I was not good at this when my kids were little, I've become a lot better at it. But making time for you during that personal time, this year I committed to running a half marathon. And, 5 years ago, I never would have taken 3 hours on a Sunday morning to go running because it meant time away from my kids. But having that time, it gave me a lot of energy.
Mhm.
Right now I work out twice a week at night, and it gives you energy to be present because I find a lot of the times when you do get home, it's like, oh my God, when's bedtime? And I have to be present. I have to put this on. And I
Yeah.
have found that commitment to your body and to your health really injects that kind of separation and that energy. So that's been a big lesson for me. I mean, everyone has said it. You read a million articles about the importance of moving and kind of, investing in yourself, but I never really took it to heart until this year, and it's made a huge difference.
That's amazing. I find that as well. It's been a struggle for me too, but I find when I do it, it's just a game changer in
Yeah.
terms of how I
Yeah.
feel and my energy. I actually find if I actually have this really funny bike desk behind me that I
Yeah.
use sometimes, and I find the days that I use it, often will listen to Question Period and ride my bike for the hour.
Yeah.
And in the evening when I take my kids to sports, if I've done that, I'm
Yeah.
almost not tired at all.
Yeah.
And
No,
other
exactly.
days, I'm literally like can barely get to the car to get into the car to take them to where they need to go. So,
100%. It makes
yeah,
such a
it's kind of
difference.
funny. Can you talk us through how did you first open your company? Like, how did you
Mhm.
make that first step of your first company?
So I think I was really shaped by working at an agency in Toronto. I
Mhm.
loved the experience. It was Enterprise Canada. I can't say enough good things
Ah.
about them and their leadership, Barb Fox. And then I came back to Ottawa and I was working as a communications manager for another company. And I grew up seeing my parents be entrepreneurs. They both ran their own business. So I think I just had guts to steal. Like, I think now I would question myself. I quit that job and I didn't have these grand plans of running a significantly sized agency. It really was, I just think I want to be my own boss. So it was pretty gutsy at the time, but it was a pretty good mindset that, you know what, you're 25, give this a shot. You have found what you're good at. I knew that I had a skill set. And then it just kind of blossomed over time. I had my two children at 27 and 29, and I needed support. So it kind of came from a means of a requirement to have other people support me. And then I realized I like this. I like growing. I like proving people wrong. There's an opportunity in the space because a lot of agencies are wonderful, but there's also very much an old school mentality that a lot still holds that doesn't really jive with the current workplace culture. So I saw an opportunity. So it was somewhat organic. It was organic mixed with gutsiness, mixed with like a bit of a wake up call that, you can do this. And that came a few years after I started, right? Like it takes time. Everyone thinks there's this clear path, and you're gonna see this huge amount of success right away. Like sometimes it just takes kind of like trying to turn the lights on for 2 years to figure out that like when you do turn the lights on, it's pretty shiny in that space and that there's opportunity.
Yes, I think that's so true for people who might be interested in becoming entrepreneurs that are listening as well, that sometimes it is this long-term
Yeah.
journey, and it can be messy. And people might look at you and I and think, oh, they did it, it's so easy, but it's actually not.
No,
And
it's
I
not.
think that's important for people to know, because they can do it, and
Yeah.
you don't have to have it all together and perfect in order to do it.
No, I don't think any woman that I know that's achieved a great amount of entrepreneurial success has had it all together at all times. Like, there are messy moments. There are moments
Hmm.
where I'd have babies and carriers at the park and I'd be on the cell phone trying to book meetings with MPs or, on the phone with media, and you'd feel an immense amount of guilt. But I look back now and I'm like, you know what? I'm proud of her. Like, she was in her 20s, she was hustling,
Yeah.
she was building something and she's built it. And I would say just give yourself a bit of grace. Like,
Hmm.
it's not always perfect. It's not always completely clear. There's moments when I had my second baby, I almost completely stopped running my own company. It just seemed
Mm.
way too overwhelming. I was so
Yeah.
concerned that I wasn't going to be a good enough mom. I wasn't going to be able to show up. I literally had an email to all my clients being like, it was more articulate than this, but being like, I'm out. Like, I'll
Yeah.
recommend you to this person. And it was my husband that was actually, walked me off the ledge and was like, Jen, you love what you do. You're really good at what you do. You're just getting started. You can be a good mom and you can be a good business person, but we're going to need supports. And he
Hmm.
took maternity leave. So it's like, sometimes you need an external voice
Yes.
telling you to stay the course, and kind of can quiet your internal voice. And then over time, you learn to really strengthen that internal voice.
Yes. Honestly, Jen, it's so true. And I remember, I'm sure you remember this too, but I think I called you like last summer being like, what am
Yeah,
I doing? I don't know if I can keep doing this,
I
and
remember.
going through some difficult times. And honestly, I think just having someone who's been there, who's had that experience, say, this is normal, it's okay, and you're going to be fine, is actually what I needed to
Yeah.
hear. And
I'm glad.
for you, it was probably a quick phone call in a busy day, but it is those types of things that make the difference of if somebody keeps going or not. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's really important. So thank you for that.
I'm glad it had that impact. That's amazing.
When you look at steps to scale, when you took on that first employee, how did you do that? What did that process look like?
So the first employee was the toughest hire, and I would say I've really grown to love the scale up process since, and I
Hmm.
think that's why I know I'm meant to be a business person. But at the time, I actually felt nauseous putting out that employment contract because it was such a mental leap from, okay, you're on your own, you don't have a safety net, to now somebody else is on their own with you and you're
Hmm.
their safety net as well, and you're not even
Yes.
sure about your own safety net at this point, let alone
Yes.
somebody else's. And I think as women we're compassionate people. It's not cut and
Yes.
dry for me. It's like I am now tasked with somebody's livelihood. It's not just, if it doesn't work out, we'll cut them loose and move on. It's a huge amount of responsibility.
Yes.
So I actually remember, I don't drink anymore, but I had maybe a martini or two the night that I sent it, and I fired off the employment contract, and it worked out really well. And I haven't looked back. And now, I fired off 3 employee contracts in the last 3 months, and I haven't felt an ounce of fear. I
Mm.
know it's the right thing for the company and for the business, but it's always those first steps. It's
Yes.
deciding to go out on your own. It's hiring your first employee. It's engaging your first, accountant. I used to do everything on my own, reconciling
Yes.
the accounts, sending out invoices, the only thing that the accountant did was T4s and T5s at the end of the year. So it's those firsts. And
Yeah.
then once you realize, it wasn't nearly as scary as you thought it would be, and things are okay. And if
Right.
they're not okay, it's not going to be awful. Um,
I
it becomes
find
a lot
I find
easier.
some of the most gratifying moments are when you can bring those experts in, and it
Yes.
takes kind of like a chip off your shoulder, right? Like a weight pops off. It's like, okay,
Yes.
like I now have a lawyer, or like I now have an accountant, or I now have a bookkeeper. And
Exactly.
yeah, it really helps because you also feel like if you picked the right people and they're good at your job, it's supporting you too. It's not,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Well said.
yeah, it feels a lot more secure in some ways and just easier
Yeah.
in many ways. I know for me, one of the challenges that I have experienced is just because our work is so client based, right? You have to build up enough clientele to bring somebody
Yes.
else on board without completely destroying yourself is a
Yes.
challenge. How did you
Yes.
do that?
Very deliberately. So, at Syntax, I used to take on every project under the sun, and then I realized from a business perspective, if we're all in with one client for a month and then we don't have that secure revenue, we've got a problem. So, we have minimum retainers, we have minimum engagement periods, and then I
Mm,
went out and I hired people that, frankly, at the time I thought I couldn't afford, but they're the best in their respective businesses. So that meant we turned down some clients because they just wanted that quick injection, that quick fix, but it
right.
really set us up for long-term stability.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. We might have to talk about that more.
Yeah, well, it's like it's what you kind of want to teach your kids. Like there's that short-term injection that you might need or you might want at the time, but
Mhm.
do I actually want to build a sustainable agency? And if I do, I don't want to be the cheapest option. I don't want to have, 1 month engagements where I cannot forecast, so therefore I cannot give my clients
Yeah.
really strong employees to service them.
Mhm.
So it was a very awkward transition, or I felt it was awkward because the people pleaser in me wanted to say yes to everything. And looking at my balance sheet, I wanted to say yes to everything. And this was several years ago, but it really helped us scale and helped us grow. And then we attracted some of those bigger clients that weren't shocked. In fact, they kind of expected those kind of terms from a service provider.
Right.
And it took us out of that little pond into that medium large agency where we're just playing, they're very similar terms to other large agencies.
Mhm.
And the perception of syntax then changed because of our engagement term. So um, it was a tough conscious decision, but it really paid off in the end.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. It's nice when you make those right decisions and where you get the
they're,
outcomes that
they're
that
not
you're
always
looking
right.
for. No.
Not always right. I mean, certainly
Yes.
I've failed and I've learned, but that was a good one.
Yes. Amazing. I want to talk more about leading multiple initiatives. You're
Yep.
doing lots of different things. Can you maybe briefly speak about what
Sure.
those are?
Yeah, so we've talked about Syntax. So Syntax is a public affairs and communications firm. We employ over 20 full-time staff and about 10 contractors. My husband and I own a company, he runs it, called Ottawa Valley Grain Products, but we equally own that organization. And that produces grain and barley and wheat for the Canadian market, but a lot of export markets as well. And we're working on a really exciting redevelopment project, which is pretty neat. So I love that business and I spend not as much time as I would like in it, but kind of future plans I would love to. And then I run the Honest Talk with my co-founder Catherine Clark, who is incredible. We started the podcast 4 years ago now, and we have
Yes.
just launched a media site for women,
Mhm.
which is fantastic and really I think feeds my soul and is a really needed. It's why you do this stuff too, right? It's a really needed space where we tell
Mhm.
women's stories. They submit essays. We curate news daily. We just hired a full-time editor to manage that for us,
Congratulations.
which is exciting. So we're super excited about that. And then I wear a number of community hats as well. I sit on a few boards. I lead the BIA here in CARP. But it's really about having value. Like I don't feel the
Mm.
need to go, spend 20 hours a month on the BIA, but I do want to come in and bring value and lead events and initiatives that are going to benefit the community. And that's the same for all the businesses. Like I hire good people, I stay out of their way, and when I do want to contribute, I want it to bring in value to that respective organization. Where I like to play now and where I'm starting to play in all these businesses is that long-term growth trajectory.
Mm.
We've got a team now supporting where do we want to go? What markets do we want to grow into? Who do we need to hire to do that? And then how do we kind of orchestrate that strategically?
Oh, that sounds very interesting. I don't know if you know this, but Catherine would have been one of our early guests when
Oh,
we started the
fun. I
podcast, and
didn't know
I
that.
think
I
it
love
might have
that.
even been before the Honest Talk. She was so generous to come because I had met her at a few work events and I didn't know her
Yeah.
very well. So she at the time would have been probably one of the more prominent people I knew. So
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
so thankful when she said yes. It really meant a lot to me to have her come and do that.
Yeah, she's just an incredible person, really.
Hmm. When you talked about it a little bit already, like how do you grow or engage some of these things while also running your own business. I know for me,
Yeah,
I've been very intentional about, for instance, how many clients I will take on in my
yeah,
business versus, running the back end or wanting to produce content or different
yeah.
things. And so how do you manage that?
So I think it's really the growth of syntax has afforded me a bit more time, and not always. Like I was working this weekend on a proposal
Hmm.
because people were off for March break. Like I don't want to paint this completely glamorous strategic picture because it's not true. But we've grown. I now have a COO at Syntax. We've got an executive vice president. We've got a lot of senior team members. So having people come in and having systems in place that we know are integral to how we produce good content has been really invaluable. So
Mm,
building up syntax was a labor of love through the decade of my 30s and late 20s. And now that we've got good people running it, along with me and the team, it affords me a bit more time. But I
hmm.
also probably like overfilled my plate, if I'm being totally candid with you, in my 30s.
Hmm.
And I'm not sad that I did because now I have all these things that I really like to do. But
Hmm.
it meant like a few times of pure overwhelming, feelings during that decade where it just
Yes.
felt like it was too much. But I feel like any entrepreneur that has a vision or likes to create or drive things forward has those moments where it's just like, what are you doing to yourself? you know?
Yes.
But then you get through it, you don't
Yeah.
sidestep it, you go through it and you're thankful you did it.
Mhm. It is really challenging. I remember, like, if people ask me, like, how did you grow your career so much from being so young? And the reality is, I worked my day, I came home and gave my kids attention, and then when I put them to bed, I worked for a few hours, and I did that
Yeah,
every day. I was
yeah,
exhausted, like, probably you could use the word burnout.
yeah,
But I also wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't done that. And so it
yeah,
is a really big challenge because I
yeah,
hear a lot of women in particular talk about, you don't need to do that or you don't need to do this. And you do need to do some of that to
yeah.
to
No,
make
you
it
do.
happen, right? And so it's a bit of a challenge to.
It is, and I feel like as women, we talk a lot about getting things off of our plate and the
Mm,
power of no. And I gave a talk recently, and it was about the power of yes
mm,
and saying yes to things that you want to say yes to, and also creating opportunities that with a bit of grit and work ethic and many late nights could really be something that gives you a lot of joy and happiness. There's
yes.
a lot of power in that, and like we have this pedestal of what success looks like, and it looks like perfect work life balance. It looks like being present with people at all times. And I think it's also okay to recognize that some women are driven by working more or taking on these lofty, ambitious ideas and, betting on themselves.
Yes.
And I think we need to shift that narrative because it's been kind of all or nothing. You either are
Hmm.
burnt out or you have achieved work life balance and you're happy. And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
I think we can do both. I think
Right.
we can.
I like how you talked through that. I find I wrote a blog post maybe a couple years ago about being ambitious. And it was really unpacking. I think a lot of people would look at me and call me ambitious.
Yeah,
And the reality is, like, I don't try to be at all. It's
yeah,
natural and like I can't stop it. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Oh,
it's
it's just my
basically
factory.
impossible. And so
Yeah.
I imagine people being like, "Oh my gosh, she's so ambitious. She's so blah blah blah." I'm like, I'm not even like it's just natural. Like I'm not even trying. I don't know what
No,
to tell
it's
you.
just the factory setting.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah,
is.
that's a good way to say it. It's just a factory setting. I like what you said about growing syntax and how that's allowed you to have some flexibility in time because the reality is that has a lot to do with you as a leader and your management because a lot of people don't do that well and have their hands so deep into a million clients themselves that they wouldn't be
Yes.
able to do that. And so I think it speaks to a lot in terms of uh how strategic you are,
Yeah,
really.
no, I appreciate you saying that because when you're starting, I had to be very, and I've got employees that would tell you this, very in the weeds. Like, this is our quality standard. We hire two full-time editors to proof things because you know what it's like to send something out to a client that's got a mistake in it.
Yeah.
And it's been a leap for me to not micromanage, but it's been very deliberate because I know I can't. I know this
Yeah.
company can't
If you
scale, it
want
can't
to
be
grow, you just
successful.
cannot.
you cannot, and it's having trust that we've put in systems and standards and
Yes.
expectations in place, and also trust. Trust is
Yes.
huge. Like once
Yeah,
you
I've
lose
actually had
trust,
staff say to me, like, "Don't you wanna see this again?" or whatever, and I'm like,
yeah,
"No." Like, if I've hired you at a senior level, I don't expect to have to. If I
well, you
have
shouldn't
to,
have
it's a
to.
problem.
That's right. No, exactly. That's right. And if someone breaks your trust and it's not repairable, that's a completely different,
Yes, of
not
course.
fun HR issue. But no, you've gotta trust. And you know what? Not everything's going to be perfect either. Mistakes are going to happen.
Mhm.
And you need to realize that's not the end of the world. We're not operating on people. Lives are not at stake. We're
Yes.
all doing our best effort with systems
Yes.
and processes in place. But at the end of the day, letting go of some of that too has been really cathartic.
Mm. When I imagine when and I feel like I know this because people will say it to me that when you're involved in a lot of initiatives, I mean, if you look at, let's say, your social media, people would
Yeah.
say, "Oh, she's so busy and she's involved in so many things." And I want women to know that they can do things like that too,
Yeah.
eventually, maybe not right away, right? And they might say, "It could never be me." What would you
Yeah.
say to someone who has that
Oh,
perception?
first of all, I'd say social media is fake.
Yeah.
And the perception that everyone says that to me. I get, you were all over the map last week, and it's like, yes and no. I was also home, 5 of 7 nights watching a show with my kids. So what we portray is real, but how people perceive it can be very flawed.
Right.
Um, and I would say, absolutely, if this is what you want to do, if this is
Yeah.
what, fills your cup, it's very doable. And the biggest factor is self-confidence. You
Mm,
opened the podcast about what motivates me, and I said me, and that sounds a bit selfish, but it's self-confidence and it's betting on yourself because I'm going to tell you stuff, people can support you and like you or not like you, but no one's going to bet on you like you bet on yourself.
you're right.
Like maybe your mother or your partner, but you've got to bet on yourself.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think and to be honest, like, that will carry you through a lot of the tough times, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I find, because so many people don't bet big on themselves, like, they
Yeah.
have a hard time believing that someone else can do it too.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like I know people that, and I love these people, but they work in jobs and they hate their jobs. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
well, we just have, 20 years until I have a pension. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I just want to shake their heads and be like, bet on yourself. You're a leader in whatever sector that is, insurance, law, whatever you do. It doesn't have to be communications. And I just know, we've talked about the stressful times, but the benefits outweigh the negatives by
Mhm.
far.
Also,
And I just couldn't imagine sitting in a cubicle not enjoying my life for 20 years. Lots can happen.
yes, yeah, absolutely. It's also, really interesting because I think too, as you're growing these initiatives or as I'm growing my initiatives, you have this team building around you and supporting you too.
Yeah,
When you look at somebody like Mark Cuban, I forget how many companies he invests in, but it's not like people are like, Mark,
yeah,
how are you doing it? Like, we know how he's doing
exactly.
it. He's got lots
Well,
of money
exactly.
and lots of people helping him.
Exactly. And I'm not gonna lie, as I have grown and I have as a woman, this seems strange to say, although it shouldn't, I have made money. And
Yeah.
investing that money
I've
back
made
in
money.
people,
This
I
is
have
how we
made
do these
money.
things.
Right, but men would
Yeah.
say that in a heartbeat. I have made money and now I have a support team. I have an assistant. I have people, helping me execute upon these ideas. We just hired a full-time editor for the Honest Talk. And I think we need to talk about that as women because people think when they look at somebody with a lot of endeavors, whether it's me or somebody else, they think she's doing it all.
Hmm.
And because that is the expectation of women. But the truth is, if you can be a smart business person, you don't have to do it all. And you can
Hmm.
have ideas and you can grow and you can scale because you've got other people involved.
Yes. And even on the personal side, I mean, for sure, when my business is doing well, there I have supports in my house, like having people come and clean.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. We, like shedding all the layers, because I think as women we need to shed layers so
Yeah.
we can relate to one another. We have a cleaner. I have someone 2 days a week that comes and helps with meals and laundry. I have a
Yeah.
supportive husband. I bought an office place 2 kilometers from home to cut out a commute, which gives me an hour or two extra a day. Like, I think we need to be really honest about the systems and the support that we have to be able to do what we do, because, I don't think that there's any glamour in trying to look unattainable to
Hmm.
others. You want others to understand how you got there, and that it's not you just juggling everything and they can't and you can, because that's not the truth.
No, and I mean, to be honest, I think that's why both of us do things like we do. Like women
Yeah.
don't do that and the honest talk is because we want to change those narratives. And I do you guys are putting out some great stuff on the honest talk, like really thoughtful
We
conversations, but
want an
also
essay from you.
oh, well, yeah, we'll have to work on that.
Yes.
And I saw the one that you put out on makeup the other day, and I was like, "Oh, I need
Yes.
to read that one too." So really, like, very good, really interesting, very topical content.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's so important. And I think, once our editor starts connecting her with you as well and other women, because that's what we're trying to do, is have those conversations, and everything from makeup to menopause to relationships to work to personal life.
Yes.
It's super important because, like Shrek said, women are like, not women, he said people, but I think women are like onions. We've got so many layers,
Yes.
and I think the more we talk about it and we show those layers and we find compassion for one another and shared mutual experiences, the stronger we are.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I've kind of been struggling with as all my ideas are coming to fruition is even just the identity of what that looks like. I think because as women, we don't often think about playing that big or
Yeah.
and as it's happening to me, and I'm a person who normally thinks quite big, I've have found it a little challenging. How do
Yeah.
you like even when someone asks you like, "Jennifer, what do you do for work?" or "What's your job?" How do you answer?
A lot of people don't understand what I do.
I
I
I
say,
can
I,
identify with that.
yeah, I say I'm an entrepreneur and I wear a number of different hats around a few businesses. And if someone's genuinely interested, we'll unpack it.
Right.
Um, but I've known women in particular who need to tell you their job within the first like 20 seconds of meeting them, because it's like such an integral part of their identity. And I really try not to do that. I really try to be like me first. And then if you're interested in what I do, I'll tell you, but I don't view it as this like badge of honor that Stephanie, I must tell you, so therefore I'm validated in front of you because I'm successful. So
Yes.
I've really tried to distinguish like who am I as a person
Mhm.
versus who am I as a business person? Where do they intersect and where do they not?
Right.
And I
And do
try to make
you
that conversation very organic about what I do.
yeah, oh, I like that. And do you I mean, I'm assuming you do, but let's say you were at a reception where most people would be interested in syntax. Like, would you dive more into that?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'll
Yeah.
be very deliberate. So, for the most part, like I said, my husband runs the grain business, so I don't often wear that hat. But I was at the farm show last week, so I did wear that hat. But syntax and the honest talk, for the most part, are what I'm talking about. And then certainly,
Mhm.
if I'm at a community event, it's the BIA. But those are my two like loves in terms of business and driving those forward. And I think really big for both of them. And I think that's okay to say.
Mhm. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you are also involved in grain and farming. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up in a rural community, surrounded by farms and spent a lot of
Yes,
time playing on farms. So
I love
I
that.
yeah, I think I don't know about your personal experience, but I find for me when I think about my story of coming to Ottawa and getting involved in politics, uh that rural community aspect and
Yeah,
just the way you grow up, the things you
yeah,
value, never leaves you and really
yeah.
frames me as a person.
Oh, it's been one of the greatest pleasures of like my personal life and my business life to buy this business, see it grow. And like I said, we're working on a really exciting redevelopment project that I think in the next decade of my life could really define my entrepreneurial journey, because there's so much opportunity in food,
Mhm. Ooh,
that building this new manufacturing facility, which is what we're looking at, can really open a lot of doors. And then if we
yes.
bring in the marketing side of syntax and market products and tell that farm to table story, it really excites me and it brings in all those passions, a women-led business, knowing where your food comes from, building a brand. So yeah, it's really exciting, and it's a really wholesome sector and a lot of great people.
Right. Well, we'll have to talk on offline more about that too, because my husband is an engineer and works for a company that does food processing equipment. So
Oh, amazing.
yeah,
Absolutely.
lots of lines and things to.
Lots of lines.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love talking to people just in general, because you
Yeah,
never know. You'll talk to
I
someone and then they'll end
know.
up being a great guest for the podcast, or I just making those
I know,
connections.
I
It's really
know.
neat.
That's why I like our podcast too. It's like the conversations and the connections, and like
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm like it's like work therapy. I'm like, that's a great insight. I'm going to write that down, or I'm going to practice
Yes.
that because
Or I should connect you to so and so, or
yeah,
so
exactly.
before we close off, I want to hear more about the honest talk, what you're up to now. How
Yes.
can listeners be engaged? Are you looking for people to write? How do they do that?
Yes.
Tell me
Great
tell me
question.
everything.
So I'm going to give you the Coles notes. Started as a podcast, had an opportunity to interview, over 70 incredible women from across Canada, and then we morphed it into a digital media platform for women. So we are updating the site daily. We're building a community for women by women, so curated content, essays on a myriad of different experiences, and we are just about to announce our summit for the fall, which we're super excited about. So
Oh,
stay tuned
yay.
on the date.
I'll
But
be
we are
there.
looking. Yay, yay, we hope so. But we are looking for content from women. So you can submit content to us. All the details are on the website. And, I feel very passionately about the connection that women can draw with one another through shared experiences. And that's what we're
Mhm.
trying to do with this content.
Yes, I agree. That's such important work, and I'm so glad that you're doing that. And are you still doing podcast interviews as well, or is it an evolution?
We are, but it's fewer episodes per season now because it's the real focus is the website, but it'll be out by the time this is released. But we interview Sophie Gregoire Trudeau in 2 days,
Oh,
which
that's
we're really
amazing.
excited about. Uh,
Congratulations. That's exciting.
so we are, but we're speaking with and now across North America, like really real game changers that either have released a book or have we just spoke to Dr. Jen Gunter, who just wrote a book about
Yes.
menopause. So like really timely topics, but the main
Yes.
focus is the media platform.
Yeah. Oh, very exciting. So as we close things off, I want to ask you, can you share a rule you've broken that turned out to be a good decision?
That is such a good question. A rule that I've broken that turned out to be a good decision. You know what? It was what we talked about. It was letting go of, and this sounds really silly, but letting go of being in the weeds. Whereas
Hmm.
I thought I had to be. Like I
Right.
lived by that the first 5 years of running a business.
Right.
And it took a lot of mental um, movement on my part to get out of the weeds. And
Well,
it
good
has
for
turned
you
out
for doing that, Jennifer, because it's not easy
not
to do
easy.
that. It is not.
It's not easy at all. So I would say that has been it. And just being open to, like I said, like letting go of the ego of running a business and being an entrepreneur has been very deliberate for me to like know who I
Hmm.
am as a person and not have to stand behind a title or accolades or press coverage. Just be me for me, and then my business life is going to speak for itself.
Yeah, that's so true. Who's a woman who continually inspires you?
It's Catherine Clark. Like
Yeah.
she and we work so closely together, but I just am continually inspired by like her integrity,
Mm,
her vision, her kindness. And it's really something to work with somebody so closely that does always inspire you, because typically,
yes.
you admire a hero or somebody from afar, but
Yes.
yeah, she inspires me.
I love that too, because sometimes when you're at the top of a company, you still want to learn and grow.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so, of course, you can learn from your employees, but it's nice to have, Catherine also has a communications company, right?
Yeah,
And so to learn and
absolutely.
grow together and to learn from each other is really amazing. What's one book that has significantly impacted your wisdom or perspective?
That would be Think Again by Adam Grant.
Okay.
And it just was the notion that, you don't need to be hard set in your ideas. You don't always
Mm.
have to be right. And you should always have like a challenge board to challenge your thinking and to think again.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
They're really
I've
good one.
I've been reflecting on that the last couple days, just in terms of you want the best idea. That doesn't have to be your idea,
Oh, exactly.
period,
And
right? Like,
exactly. And you shouldn't just dig in your heels because it is your idea. You should
right.
be challenged and be open to thinking about the process and how you get a better outcome.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Lots of wisdom for myself and also for the listeners, and really exciting to have you on just to talk about your journey and the different hats that you wear and how you manage that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Steph. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.
And congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time.